We're going to try to get a little up on our issues coming up on our ballot. Some of you may have already gotten your ballots. I did. Got them in the mail. They're a mail-in ballot this year. And in fact, I might mention, if there's actually a little fluke in some of the ballots. I got a call this morning, and the guy asked, how come I got 2 ballots? If you happen to have gotten 2 ballots in your envelope, you might want to go down and talk to the clerk's office. And she explained it to me this morning. What happened was some of the ballots are sent out to registered voters, and the others are sent out to property owners. So if you're a registered voter that's a property owner, that's fine. But there are people like they're renters. They don't have any property. They're just registered voters. There's some issues on the ballot this time that they don't vote on. I think probably Dolores Water Conservation is one of them, because they're deal with property owners. Well, he got both ballots, and both ballots, they actually has the hospital is on both ballots. She says, I get to vote for the hospital twice. And I said, I don't think that's going to work. But the clerk's office says, no, they've got something in line to catch them. But she says, there's a few of those that happened. They ended up with both of them for whatever fluky reason. So if you've got 2 ballots in the same envelope, you might want to square with the clerk's office. We want to try to make you informed, find out what in the world it's all about. All 3 issues. Well, there's actually 4 issues, but 3 local issues and 1 state issue. You should have gotten your blue book, and it deals with the 1 issue in the state that we vote on. That's BB, which has to do with returning marijuana tax money back to the marijuana growers, or back to somebody else, or to you. And it has to do with the Tabor and debrucing the marijuana tax. So that tax, then we've got 3 taxes here. We've got the Dolores Water Conservation, we've got the Dolores Schools, and we got the hospital. The schools, they apologized, says they were scheduled somewhere else tonight and they couldn't be here, so back there on the back table, there's some of these. This one's in color, those aren't. But it says the same thing, but he explains what this is all about. So we'll pick up one of those for information on the Dolores School tax issue. The others, we'll go ahead, and what I'd like to do is have them present, and we'll go through Water Conservation District first, and he'll give a little pitch on what it's all about and why and wherefore, and ask some questions. When we do the questions, we'd like to be able to use a mic, so if you've got a question, I'll get a mic to you, because we're trying to record this because a lot of our people are not able to be with us. They're up, can't believe they do this, but they're up elk hunting. And then there's some farm issues going on as well. So a lot of them can't be here, so we're taping this so we can put it on our website so those people that are not able to be with us can review this before they send in their ballots, so they can be informed. Mike Preston, would you like to come give us a little pitch on the Dolores Water, or you can do it from there if you'd like. Let me get you a mic so we can record you right, because it's all hooked into there so we can get a good recording.
Okay, thank you. My name is Mike Preston. I'm manager of the Dolores Water Conservancy District. Just a little bit of background on the district. As you know, Montezuma Valley Irrigation Company has been delivering water since the turn of the century out of the Dolores River Basin into the Montezuma Valley. The Dolores project was authorized in 1977. The dam was closed in 1986. And what it did is create the storage that had never been available in the past. If you have MVI shares, kind of pre-Dolores project, the irrigation deliveries would be cut back to about half a head, say by the end of July, because the Narragansett and Totten reservoirs, groundhog, their storage would be used up, and the river drops pretty precipitously around the 1st of July. So when McPhee Reservoir was built, it was really a kind of a wonderful bargain going both ways. MVI got the storage that they had needed, so now instead of running out of water at the end of July, they're able to take full deliveries of 4 acre-feet through the 15th of October. And then as a part of the bargain, then DWCD was deeded the balance of their conditional water right, and that's what the project was built on. So it effectively doubled the irrigated acreage in Montezuma County from about 35,000, I'm just going to use round numbers, that was being irrigated under MVI, to another 35,000 additional, about 28,500 new acres up north, which had been dryland farmed from Yellow Jacket to Dove Creek. And then there's 7,600 acres around the toe of the Ute, which was a part of the Colorado Ute Indian Water Rights Settlement. So you add those two irrigation deliveries together, and there's about 70,000 acres that are being irrigated out of McCree Reservoir. The other thing that the district offers is municipal industrial water, and so we provide water to the towns of Cortez, Dove Creek, Toyoak, and then Montezuma Water Company, actually, they have a carriage agreement to take their water through McPhee Reservoir. In fact, everything in the Montezuma Valley comes through McPhee Reservoir. One additional thing, there was actually a Tabor election back in the 1990s where some of the water that the project had for municipal was going to result in very high initial kind of block notices. So the municipalities were going to have to pay water they couldn't afford to. So the voters took kind of a piece of that water, and it's available over the next 50 years. So we've got a municipal supply. The municipal industrial supply is probably good for 50 years in the future at least. So then, a little bit about how we're organized. There's the DWCD, I report to a board of directors. There are 7 members of that board of directors. They're appointed by the district judge, and they really govern the Dolores Water Conservancy District and work very closely with MVI, and MVI is a mutual ditch company. They have their own board. So that's a little bit about our structure. Now, as far as our budget goes, we have a kind of an operation and maintenance budget, which is actually what we use to keep all our facilities operated, maintained, and we're actually going through replacement of the electronics in our pumping plants now, so doing kind of the replacement cycle. We spend about $4 million a year on that side of the budget. Most of it comes from water charges, most of it from farmers, and most of it from north, from Yellow Jack to Dove Creek, because that's where a lot of the facilities are, the pumping plants, the Dove Creek Canal, and so forth. And we have a tax levy that covers a number of things. There are obligations the community made back in 1977 when the project was originally built. Those are kind of ongoing obligations to the federal government to repay construction of the project over a 50-year period. So that's where most of a good chunk of what we collect in water charges and a good chunk of about a $1 million total collected in taxes are actually payback. So $735,000 comes right off the top to pay the Bureau of Reclamation. So what we're trying to do in this election is we're doing what's typically called debrucing. We have had, what's been happening to our mill levy is that as the assessed valuation has gone up in the county, it's pressed the DWCD discretionary mill levy, which is now less than half a mil, 0.4805, I think. Let me see if we get it right here. 0.483. So that mill levy has been pushed down steadily because every time under Tabor you can only, if your revenues are going to exceed the rate of inflation, and that's been pretty low lately, then you cannot collect additional revenue, and the mill levy keeps being pushed down. So what we're asking the voters in this election is to be able to just set that mill levy, stabilize that mill levy at 0.483 mils. And it could never be increased without voter approval. But what it would allow DWC to do is that revenue would grow as assessed valuation grows, and that would allow DWCD to keep up with the responsibilities that go beyond what can be covered out of the farmer's pocket And we, in addition, by the way, our $4 million budget, we do a lot of outside work and earn about $650,000 a year operating power plants and providing other services. We do everything we can to try to keep our water charges down. So this discretionary mill levy, what it really does is some fairly critical things that involve the protection of McPhee Reservoir, the delivery facilities, and the water rights as an asset to the community now and into the future. So we use, one of the things we do is we protect the project water allocations and water rights in water court. Because we have state water decrees, and then all of our water rights are subject to federal contracts associated with the Dolores project. The other thing that we have to deal with, in addition to protecting the water rights, is the ever-changing federal and state regulatory picture. Resource management plans, various kind of things that we're confronted with really change and challenge our ability to do kind of what we need to do to deliver water. So that's the other thing, that we spend that broad resource that we get out of that discretionary revenue is really, in addition to protecting the water rights and water court, we're really pretty continuously involved in various federal and state regulatory processes and planning processes to make sure that we're protecting the water and our ability to deliver irrigation water out of McPhee. The other thing that we need to do as a district, there are a number of threats to McPhee Reservoir, and I mean, a lot of these we didn't even know existed. I don't know if has anybody ever heard of quagga mussels or zebra mussels. They're a little mussel that gets into, really gets into boats and into bait and engine compartments and things like that. Powell's infected. If you get quagga mussel infection, if we got it in McPhee, it would likely kill all the aquatic life in the lake, and then those little mussels ball together and they plug up everything in the way of racks and water delivery facilities. So that's one of the things we're dealing with. We've got to deal with the state of Colorado. We've got to deal with the Forest Service managed recreation. The state of Colorado is charged with dealing with this issue. So we have to stay right in the middle of these issues, trying to make sure that they're taken care of. Because again, if we lost the battle and the quagga mussels invaded McPhee, then it's going to be mandatory inspection, and our options become greatly limited, and everything becomes more expensive to operate. A couple of other topics that we're starting to work on: catastrophic wildfire. Anybody that I deal with reservoir managers all over southwest Colorado and the state. You get a fire like the Missionary Ridge fire in the Vicedo area, millions of dollars to try and clean your reservoir up and get everything back in shape. So we're working with the Timber Industry Association, the county, and we're starting to work with the Forest Service to see if we can't do something about. In fact, Dexter's done a lot of good articles kind of on this very subject. See if we can get ahead of the beetle die-off and of the things that are going to actually could create severe damage for McPhee Reservoir. Most recently, and this is you can see from the spill in the Animas coming out of the mine drainage and everything. That's something we have to be prepared for. So we're starting to sit down with the sheriff and with the emergency service providers and be ready in the event anything like that ever happens. So those are some of the threats that we have to deal with. Broadly speaking, the other thing that this discretionary mill levy does is it just provides administrative and financial stability to manage this major community asset. And we really can't. I mean, we're already. I mean, our water's fairly expensive because the Dolores project highly efficient, high tech, and so the price of the water in order to cover the operation and maintenance is already what the farmers are able to deal with, and so we really are able to deal with some of these other expenses from that discretionary mill levy. Finally, the drought cycle is a real killer. I mean, we have lost our revenue losses since 2013 have been in about $1.3 million in water charges. We have built, we have reserves built to keep our organization whole and to try and give relief to our irrigators, price relief, water charge relief, and we've had to do that starting in 2013. But all those reserves that have been built over the years are going to need to be replenished. So that's the other thing we have to look at we have to maintain some sort of buffer, because if we cannot, for example, our big priority right now is overhauling all our pumping plants. If we're not in a position to overhaul those plants, and those plants start to go down, I mean, the Fairview pumping plant, which we just finished, it alone irrigates 8,000 acres. So if you ever have a pumping plant failure, that would be, you put a lot of irrigation out of service. So essentially what we're trying to do is create a stable, a financially and organizationally stable entity that is able to kind of work with the irrigators and the other water users as they pay their way on the O&M charges, while at the same time maintaining the broader protections of McPhee Reservoir. Because I mean, if you talk to any other communities around the West, they would love to have this kind of resource. I mean, to be able to irrigate 70,000 acres, to have an M&I supply, that's 50 years into the future, and to be able to do any of the economic development activities that are associated with water. I think we've already seen, the benefit to that over, since the Dolores project came online, and it's going to be an asset for our children and grandchildren. And so that's why we put this measure on the ballot, and that's how you would help us in support of ballot issue 4A for the Dolores Water Conservancy District.
Anybody has any questions, I'll get you a mic to you so we can get your questions, so you can answer them. Okay, just a minute.
Mike, tell me again, did you mention that the reason for the mill levy was primarily to meet debt obligation? Was that the purpose of it at the beginning of this? Well,
there are a series of levies, and that's what the other levies are about. This is less than half a mil, and its only purpose, I mean, it's discretionary, and what it does is are the things that I mentioned. Legal professional services. It provides some administrative structure. And then it's the only discretionary money we have other than what comes out of our irrigators and our customers' pockets in the form of water rates. So the mill levies that were set up at the beginning of the project, most of them have been in place since 1977, and they will be in place until the project's paid off at the end of its 50-year kind of repayment period. So this is it started out as 1 mil, now it's down to less than a half a mil, and it's really set up for the district to, almost like a framework within which the district conducts its business. We have other, I failed to mention, we have decrees to support well drilling in the Dolores River Valley. We have a couple of hundred contracts of that nature. I mean, we've got a lot of activity going on, and so what this is the administrative structure that supports all of that, and then the ability to spend money that involves broad protection of the project as opposed to specific operation and maintenance requirements to keep the facilities running.
So the purpose was not, for this, was operational. It wasn't dedicated strictly for debt repayment.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is really to provide, because when the district started, when the mill levy, it's called the current tax mill levy. I don't know why it's called that. But when it was first set up, that was the only revenue the district had. In other words, they were trying to get organized, they were trying to get the project built, and then set up and then do everything that needed to be put in place to be able to manage essentially a $500 million project. And so that, in the early days, that was all there was. Now we've got, there were commitments made when the project was built. And then like I said, most of our budget is really coming from water charges. I mean, our water is about just less than $45 an acre foot, for people to irrigate with on the full service land. So that's the lion's share of the budget. That's where it comes from. This is really this is almost like to provide administrative structure, broad protections for the water, and for McPhee as a community asset.
Okay. I guess, is there, to a degree, I mean, from the standpoint, I guess I can understand at the beginning that you needed the money for operational purposes.
Yeah.
But does it not make sense now that the users of the water themselves should not, any of these operational expenses not be met by user fees rather than any type of a mill levy property? Does that not, to me it doesn't make sense to, even though we'll say each property user to a limited degree uses the water out of that.
I mean, we're all drinking water out of McPhee.
Yeah,
everybody.
Well, it's not on my ballot up in Mancus, but
over on this side,
in an indirect way, I'm sure I'm paying for it.
Right.
But does it seems to me like a antiquated, poorly designed way to allocate expenses through property taxes or mill levies rather than user fees and individualize that to the type of users.
Okay, so this is I guess really it's around the definition of operational expenses. So what we do in terms of the O&M that we charge our irrigators is really what it costs, what it costs the district and all users, what it costs the district to operate the system. I mean, to maintain the pumping plants, the canals, everything involved. So it's really directly engaged in the upkeep of the project. And the way that we allocate those costs is they're allocated by facility, by amount of water that each user takes through that facility. So everybody shares in the cost of the dam. When you look at the Dolores tunnel, you have a number of entities sharing in that. I mean, the city of Cortez, MVI has their canal, a canal system coming out of the tunnel and so forth. And then there's the going up north, where you have the Great Cut Dike, the pumping plants, and then all the delivery facilities going north. That's where most of the costs are, because that's where most of the facilities are. And that's where the largest share of the water is headed. So in order for those individual irrigators to be able to pay the kind of charges that it takes to keep up the project, they've been doing that. But as far as the broader protections on behalf of the community, the legal, in other words, to be able to go into court and legally protect water rights, to deal with the various the waters of the U.S., the forest and BLM planning, pressures under the Endangered Species Act, things that we have to deal with kind of on a day in and day out basis on everybody's behalf, so that we do have in the long term, a stable project with all the water rights, protected. That would be more than, that's something that the community should share in, and it shouldn't be something that's exclusively put upon the farmers. If we took what we collect from the mill levy and tried to pass it through in water charges, it would be economically damaging. Because everybody's struggling as it is, particularly when you look at the drought cycle we've been through really since 2000.
Okay, I don't understand it, because it's expenses are expenses depending one way or the other. So
yeah, are the obligations that involve the community as a whole?
If the community as a whole is using the water, then the community as a whole through user fees can pay their allocated amount. Now, however you want to allocate that through volumes or however makes sense, but to me it just seems like a very strange, odd way of collecting operating expenses through a mill levy.
Most water conservancy districts have mill levy. In fact, for the most water conservancy districts run strictly by mill levy, and the Dwcd was really set up on a cost allocation basis.
Well, I would have to say that most of the water districts are kind of odd in the way they're allocating this through property taxes in order to meet a particular good or service.
Well, I think one way to think about it as far as broad community benefits, because you say certainly if somebody's getting an acre-foot of 2 acre-feet of irrigation water and growing X amount of hay and receiving a return, that's one thing. But if you look at the evolution of this community since McPhee was built, and you actually looked at the businesses that are in place, because the project is there, and because the irrigated land is double, and because we have a 50-year supply, and because Cortez never has to worry about available M&I water, the economic benefits to the community over that period of time are enormous. And if you pulled McPhee out of the equation and you pulled the Dolores project out of the equation, we would be a poorer and economically more limited community. So you can't really cost allocate that. But I think the positive impacts of having a very stable, reliable water supply and a doubling of the agricultural base is a benefit that the community shares in.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say, and that's what everybody says is whenever they're trying to increase taxes, primarily property taxes or maintain them or whatever, they're trying to say it's good for society as a whole. I've heard that forever, my whole life.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that you're providing a good and services. Whoever's using those goods and services ought to pay for them, and it seems to me like a strange way of collecting money or passing the costs on to other people that may or may not use those goods or services, and then trying to do it on a strange, or justifying that on a strange deal as the community benefits as a whole. You may have some validity in it, but it's a very hard thing to determine exactly how each individual in that community benefits as a whole.
Next.
My name is Bob. Thank you for being here tonight. Who will be able to vote on this referendum for the ballot? Who will be the voting public?
Everybody within the Dolores Water Conservancy District.
So Dolores County?
Dolores County, yes.
Montezuma County?
Montezuma County within the district.
District only?
Yes,
and
as the gentleman mentioned.
Property owners?
What's that?
Property owners?
Yeah, property owners.
Only?
That's up. The clerk developed the list, the voter list.
Okay.
So, I mean, we went through a whole process of setting up the list, and I don't know what the deal. That's the first I heard, what Dexter was saying before.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I'll call them in the morning for sure, and when I send out the notice, our meeting, I will clarify that with them. I think that since I saw the two ballots, and it looks like that's what they did. Property owners only, not taxpayer. Maybe you know.
Yeah, yeah. And essentially the clerks put together. We had to submit. Voter lists are submitted to the clerks, and so they made the determination about who's eligible to vote in these things.
Kim, who's the county clerk, explained the reason for the two ballots is that there's a discrepancy in some of the voter lists in the various districts, like the hospital district or the Dwcd district and so forth, and they didn't realize that discrepancy existed until they realized that people were getting two ballots. Not everybody's getting two, but they've also set up a system so that you only get a chance to vote once. So whether you get two or not, you can only vote once.
That's good information, James. Thanks.
How much does the mill levy produce?
The what now?
The 0.483 mill levy produced right now. Last year, I presume the property values are going up each year.
Yeah.
That's why your mill levy is going down. Yeah. So it should be whatever it was from the get-go, right?
Yeah. So current taxes in Montezuma County are $182,000, and in Dolores County they're $11,000. So that's a couple. Really talking about a couple $100,000 that are what are called current taxes.
And that's the 0.483 only, or is that everything?
Yeah. That.
So how many? What's the total cost of the mill levy? All mill levies for the district.
Yeah. Let me get to my. Thought about my budget. Okay, so the entire levy last year was 2.314, and then the current tax levy, the one that's about 2.3 mils. And those are again all set levies; they're not going to change. And then the one discretionary mill levy, the current tax is 0.408.
Oh, it's 408.
Well, that's this year with the levy pushed down, so it's 0.483 is what it was in 2014.
And so what you're trying to do is they don't allow you to increase that under Tabor at all?
Yeah, what they do is it's a formula that takes 3 pages to fill out, but essentially they've got an inflation factor, and so so the way that it works is that you are only able to keep, in other words, if the assessed valuation goes up, then you can, and you are going to exceed those inflation limits, then your mill levy is pushed down. And so the way that it affects an entity like Dwcd is if we have a period of growth in assessed valuation, our mill levy gets pushed down. I mean, it used to be 1, and then, I looked at it over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, it was 9.9 something. So what happens is that mill levy gets pushed down. And then where it really hurts you is, or an entity, is then if the assessed valuation drops, for example, as La Plata County right now, they're going through a big assessed valuation drop because of coal bed methane. So if assessed valuation drops, you're stuck with a low mill levy, and you can't bring your mill levy back up. So your revenues are operating down at this low level until you slowly build assessed valuation back up to where you start to catch up with your revenues. So it's called ratcheting down. I mean, you're perking along, and then your mill levy evaluation goes up, your mill levy goes down. Then valuation goes down, and you got a very low mill levy, and so your revenues go down, and the pressure that it puts, on trying to meet these needs gets even worse when kind of after a downturn in assessed valuation.
Has it ratcheted down yet? Has it went down yet? I mean, let's say it was 182,000 this year. Is it going to be only 180,000 this coming year if this gets voted on?
Yeah, essentially, I was just let me look at this year's numbers, and this is a proposed budget. We're still going through the budgeting process, so I'm probably ahead of myself, but it gives you a pretty good feel. So, 940. Yeah, so what would happen this year is that if this ballot initiative fails, then our mill levy gets pushed down to 0.408. So it gets pushed down that much further, and when we'll feel it, in other words, what it'll do is it'll keep our revenues kind of flat. I mean, that's what Tabor is designed to do. And so it doesn't allow us to grow. In other words, we're collecting the same amount of money we were 12 years ago with no consideration.
You haven't went up the 2% maybe that the consumer price index would allow you to go up each year?
No, I mean, as it turns out, the difference between what we were collecting 10 or 12 years ago and what we're collecting now is a matter of is a matter of, like, say, $10,000, $12,000 or something like that. That's over 10 years. And then the painful side of it is if assessed valuation, it's up and it pushes our mill levy down. If that assessed valuation drops again at some point in the future, that's when we really get wounded. And it takes a long time to build yourself back up out of the trough. And in the meantime, we're basically short revenue to do these functions that I've been talking about.
That's why a user fee is so much better, because you can increase it yearly without a vote of the people, too.
But the user fee falls on a limited number of people. I got 2 230 farm families up there.
Oh, no, there's a lot of drinkers here in the county. Montezuma Water Company, they drink a lot of water. I mean, you'd have to pass it on to them also.
Well, but I mean, all of that is, all of our arrangements, so you're just saying, see, the problem is, there's a cost allocation formula. Sure, if I want, and so the M&I users they pay, they're a very small part of that in terms of water usage and facility usage. So if I am trying to recover money in the form of water charges, it's going to put the whammy on the farmers up north is who's going to eat it. Because all of the amounts of water going through the facilities are so small for the municipal people that I can put all kinds of, you can put surcharges on, but if you do it through the cost allocation, it's going to hit the big payers hardest, and that's the irrigators up north.
Tell you what, let's do.